Hello, welcome back to my studio. Today it's about gouache painting and specifically how I use gouache to prepare and test a subject for an oil painting. Now, if you've watched my gouache paintings in the past, you know I'm a big fan of doing small gouache studies in books like this. This is my Fabriano watercolor book, but I mostly use it for gouache painting. It's 300 grams or 140 pounds cold pressed paper, and it's fantastic for those little studies. Little things like this that I do. And what I particularly like is testing out a subject. When I'm going to do a large oil painting or maybe prepare for a demonstration, it's a good idea to do a little bit of testing and just figure out some of the problems that a subject's going to throw at you before you even get stuck into that oil painting. And gouache is perfect for that because it mimics oil paints to a large extent. Also acrylics. You get that opaque type of effect, and that kind of helps you to prepare for your oil painting. So this was a study I did for my artist's live channel, and I wanted to just test out this particular subject, and I'm going to show you the painting I did, the gouache painting, and maybe it'll inspire you to try some gouache paintings for yourself. Now before I start, I just want to mention that if you're interested in joining my artist live channel, it's a membership channel, and I do monthly demonstrations. There's critiques and painting challenges for everybody who takes part as well, so you get a lot of feedback and the fun of taking part in a painting channel as well. And you can access a large archive of HD videos where I have done demonstrations on many different subjects. So check it out in the link below. Okay, let's get started with the gouache painting. Starting off with a quick drawing. Get the horizon line in and then start putting in the shadow pattern and the focal point area specifically, and getting the rest in very loosely. Some figures will draw the eye to the focal point. Then starting with the painting, blocking in simple big shapes. Just close your eyes slightly and look for the shapes. Don't worry about details. You're looking for light and dark and warm and cool shapes. First layer is fairly thin. It's simply the blocking in and establishing the big pattern. Now getting into those important darks I was talking about. I'll need a bigger brush for that. And putting in the shadow pattern in the foreground, because it's a warm day, I'm going to be using a lot of blue in the shadows. So cool color temperature in shadows on sunny days. Mostly cerulean blue and ultramarine blue. Dropping in a little bit of alizarin or burnt sienna for extra dark colors. But as I said, this is the first layer, the blocking in stage, so many layers to come over this. And doesn't this alizarin look really great? Cooling those shadows down, making them a little more opaque in the distance, because I want the eye to head into this painting as well along the pathway. Now these strong darks are the fulcrum for all the strength and interest in the painting. The middle value shapes like these greens play a secondary role. Of course it all works together and creates an interesting painting, but without the strong darks the lights get lost. So look for the dark shapes, put those in the early stage of the blocking in, even before you get to the lights. Once all these darks are in, the painting will look more interesting straight away. smaller brush on such a small piece of paper, you don't necessarily need a large brush, but this is about as small as it gets, except for perhaps a few dots and dashes at the end. Just keep the paint fairly loose and quite saturated as well. Now into the lights, using titanium white with a bit of yellow and alizarin to warm it up. White on its own is simply too cold and chalky. So the values on the side of these buildings are quite light, but not warm enough. So I'm going to put in a bit of warm color again. And that's the thing, light values shouldn't mean cold, chalky color. So it's always something to keep in mind with gouache especially. Clean up the palette and change the water in the jar. Clean water helps to keep your color notes clean as well. Stage 2 means new layers, building on the blocking in stage. Now you get to refine the shapes a little more, fix up any errors, and maybe drop in more color. That's always a good thing to do. This left-hand side of the reference getting a bit more strength with some strong darks to help show off the lights on the right-hand side in due course. Now there are so many details up on this hill, so I really have to simplify. Just suggest light and dark. There's no way I'm going to try and paint all the twigs and leaves and cobblestones and things like that. That's not what the painting is about. It's about light and atmosphere. Always look for light and dark and warm and cool. Now before I get into those figures, I've just got to clean up the background a little and start refining some of those shapes a bit more. I want a bit more life in the pathway, even in the shadows. So I'm going to be certainly introducing some direction lines. So I keep going really until I have what I'm looking for. You have an idea in mind, but you can only explore it by putting paint down and testing it. Now this is practically impasto, white and yellow, some alizarin, layers, that's what it's about. Highlights come at the end. You've got to set the foundation for your highlights. Now with a little sable brush for a few of these little details, simply refining. If some area is too flat, you may have to just bring in dots and dashes. Little highlights, a little room lighting, and then into the figures, and quite a fun part for me, but they got to still be loose, merely suggestive. And then some highlights around the figures will help them to stand out a bit more. With that gouache drying darker all the time, you have to keep working the values until you're happy and you have just that right combination of light and dark. So this is more or less an intuitive stage. I keep up the shapes and the smaller shapes until I have the mood or the feeling of the scene that I want. An interesting selection of light and dark shapes. So you've got to improvise a little. If you see flat area, bring in some interesting color like I'm trying to do here. Just keep things alive and moving. A few little shapes to break up these darks that are a little boring really, so nice touches of cerulean blue, and that's pretty much done. I will touch up the figure I think on the left a little, but for the rest it's simply, you'll know it's done. You'll feel that you can't add anything significant. So then stop. I think that's a little better. So time to sign off and finish this painting, and I really enjoyed it. So have a go with something like this yourself. Well, there was that painting, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And if it's inspired you to try out gouache for yourself, have a look on my channel. I've got lots of gouache resources in this YouTube channel, and you can find everything you need to know about materials and paint consistency, and then get some paints and start painting. And remember to subscribe to this channel and keep an eye out for the next video. I try and put one out every week, and you'll find lots of painting inspiration in the future as well. Until next time, cheers for now.